You want me to call the cops? Not a problem. Might as well share something that happened to me. Saw a thread over on legal advice that reminded me about this incident, figured it might fit here. This happened to me in 2013. I was over 30, had gone back to school, and it was the Friday before finals week on my last semester to finish my CE degree. Bordering around campus, it's rather low income and not highly educated, and not a place I frequented. I walked into a gas station, we'll call it Square L, about 7:30 a.m. Locally, that's 30 minutes after they start selling alcohol. County is dry between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. Grab 2 of the largest packs of cheap beer they sell, and head up to the register. No big deal, just stocking up for a small study party with friends on campus later that day. The person behind the register eyes me suspiciously as I set them on the counter and tells me I'm not buying them. I politely explain it's after 7 a.m., and I don't see a problem. The manager, denoted by dress shirt instead of polo, leans over and tells her to get my ID, so she asks me for it. I'm like, fine, whatever, and I fidget around a minute before realizing it's in my car. I say as much and offer to grab it, and she told me to go ahead. I dash out to my car, grab my wallet from my book bag. No big deal. Walk back in and present it to the person at the register, who promptly glances at it, snickers, snaps it in half, tosses it in the trash, and tells me to get the duck out of her store. I stood there a minute, sort of dumbfounded. The manager tells me to get the duck out of the store or police will be called and someone is getting arrested. I mumbled something along the lines of "oh shit," and opted to comply with the second half. I went to my car, grabbed my phone, called non-emergency and told them I just had my driver's license taken and destroyed, read off the address, ended my call, then headed back inside and stood. The manager tells me that's it, they are calling the cops. I let her know I already did. The clerk laughs and shouts for the people in the store to hear. You'll want to stick around, this punk called the cops on us for taking their fake ID. It took about 10 minutes, but they showed up. As they arrived, the manager rushed out the door, and I walked behind. The cop asked for me immediately by name, dismissing the manager pointing at me and rattling off about my fake ID. I told him what happened, and I was told to leave or cops were to be called and someone was to be arrested. He then takes the statement from the manager, then the clerk, then requests the ID be retrieved from the trash. He looks it over, and hands the 2 pieces back to me. He hasn't said anything other than simple requests for info up to this point, then asks me to come along, and we're going to have a chat outside. At this point, I'm actually growing a bit concerned. He punches in the DL number, and up pops my face and info. Clean history, both driving and criminal. He then lets me know that destruction of a license is a misdemeanor in this state, and asks which one snapped it. We have a brief conversation, and at this point, he's smiling ear to ear. He asks me if I want to press charges. And at this point, I've already missed first class, so state I do. I'm told to play along with him, and we share course of action. By this time, there were 4 squad cars, and police milling about. Customers had grown scared. We walked back in, I'm staring at the floor looking pensive. And he says loudly, "What do we say?" and nudges me. I politely say, "I'm very sorry this happened, and I'm sure it won't happen again." The clerk and manager begin chuckling. I then finish with the manager requested the clerk take it. Who snapped it? Then the manager is the one who said someone is getting arrested. The officer undid the cuffs from his belt, walked up to the clerk, and began with Miranda rights. Another did the same to the manager. Another 30 minutes roll by while they are sitting in the backs of squad cars. Store is devoid of employees until someone walks out from the back cooler. I wait patiently, eventually they are cut loose under own recognizance and I'm given a date to play witness in court. We head back in and the manager is irate. The employee, on release, bolted. I pay for my now warm beer, and leave. My professor got a great laugh out of the police report, and let me do my project presentation late anyway. TLDR, the juicy bits are above, but in a nutshell, fake ID taken and broken then trashed. I'm told leave or someone will call cops and someone will be arrested. I complied with the second option. Edit, as for the court date, one of them pushed it further, so it turned into 2 dates. As the witness, I showed up, but wasn't really needed. The first pled no contest to a charge for destruction of state property, got 6 months probation and 1,000 hours of community service, as well as having to write me an apology. The other ended up pleading guilty to an obstruction charge, and got 6 months probation only. Neither ended up going to jail, and only wore bracelets for the 30 minutes or so in the car. Sorry it's a bit anticlimactic, but I felt justice had been served. Edit 2, for those who say 1,000 isn't possible, it started as probation and 100 hours for the first person who plead no contest. They spoke out against the judge. He upped it to 200, then 500, then 1,000. Kid kept mouthing off. But the judge, at that point, told the bailiff to remove them. That was the clerk, and I remember there was a string of other offenses on their record. The manager had only had a previous possession charge, but on his date, acted humble and polite in court, total opposite of how they had in the store with the cops. Edit 3, I never did get the apology letter. If it was written and turned in, I have no idea where it went. Now to the comments. In college a friend and I went to a store, he wanted to buy cigarettes. The lady kept the ID, saying it was fake and saying she would call the cops. He told her to do so, and she did. Cop walks in, looks at the ID, looks back at her, and says why would anyone make a fake ID saying they were 20 instead of 21? My friend actually wanted to get a fake saying he was 20 because he was going to Iceland and the drinking age there is 20. Figured they'd think, why would an American get a fake saying they're 20? That's actually pretty clever, except it's a huge waste of money if it's not a long trip. I got carded for Weinhardt's root beer once. Luckily, I was over 21 and had my ID. When I pointed out that I was not purchasing alcohol, the cashier got really embarrassed, but I thanked her for making me feel young again. The cashier may have seen hard root beer and reacted on instinct. That is true. The root cancels out the beer, but then the hard cancels out the root. And I don't know what the wine does. So I can totally see carding someone for causing so much confusion with their purchasing choices. God, they suck at their job. It's easy. Here, you can refuse to serve anyone for any reason. So even if they have ID, you can say, I'm sorry, I'm not convinced this is legitimate. You'll have to take your business elsewhere. Then you give them back their ID. They have zero recourse. They might leave a bad Yelp review. If you've got evidence the ID is fake, scanner, blacklight test etc., you tell them to their face. Your ID didn't scan. I'm required to call the police and hang on to it as evidence until they show up. I've got better thing to do than babysit you. You're welcome to leave, but please don't return. They've got a choice. If they leave, we didn't even call the cops most of the time. If they hung around, we called the non-emergency number and someone would come by an hour later. Usually, the patron had gotten bored and left. The cops collect the fake, take a statement, life goes on. If you duck up, the police are the ones to confirm the ID is real and return it, and you've done nothing illegal. Most places require you to take an online course and pass an exam to serve alcohol. This is all covered. Yep. My online course told me to either decline the sale, or get my manager over to deal with it if it was really bad. We didn't have scanners or anything either, but one kid forgot to put anything on the back of his fake lmao. Jesus, how sloppy can you be? I hate people who won't believe I'm over 21 when they're looking right at my ID. I went to a grocery store and bought some liquor and some candy. I walk over to the cashier, put my stuff on the belt, and she starts scanning. I'm looking at the card swipe pad and she tells me to swipe, but I notice the total is only like $3. I look at the belt and the liquor is still there. I tell her I wanted the two, and at this point I'm super confused because it's not like it's hiding and there was no one behind me. She grabs it, rolls her eyes at me, and scans it and snarkily asks for my ID, which I hand to her. I usually get carded, so no big deal, but her attitude is annoying me at this point. She takes the ID and pushes some buttons on the screen and goes, "I can't sell this to you," with that same stupid smirk like she caught me doing something wrong. The thing you should know about this store is that they have the ability to scan my ID, which will tell them all they need to know about me so they can sell me the alcohol. She didn't scan it. I said, "What do you mean?" Now I'm super confused and pretty pissed off. No one had ever denied me before, because while I look young, I also have visible tattoos and my face pierced, nose and lip. So, I don't look like I'm 14, but I guess I could be younger than 21, but it's still believable that I could be 23. She then tells me that I'm too young or not old enough or something. I say, "Excuse me? I'm 23. It says so right on that ID. What are you talking about?" Luckily, before I got really mad, another cashier came over and says she said she's 23 and takes my ID and finished the transaction. I thank her and the original cashier says sorry, still in that awful snarky attitude way. I'm still so mad about that happening. Ugh. Should have complained to management. I didn't have time at that moment, but I wrote to corporate. They sent an email back saying sorry or something.